All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Understanding the Differences Between CBD Products. We have a full 30-minute webinar today and a lot to cover, so we are going to jump right into it. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please be sure to send them in. We will be collecting those questions on that Q&A panel, and we'll be staying on at the end of the webinar to address those questions. Also a reminder that we are recording today's webinar, so we will be able to share this with everyone who registered and who in attendance today. So if there's something you missed or you need to step away, no worries. We will send this full recording when it's available. Just a reminder that we are covering this webinar today as an informational and educational purposes only. The content that we're covering comes from our experience and knowledge in the industry, and we've cited our sources where appropriate. I'd love to introduce you to the team that will be joining us today on today's call. My name is Julie Boyster. I'm the head of marketing at Integrated CBD and happy to be on with you guys all today. We'll also have Brandon Blass, who's our lead R&D scientist, has a ton of great information on extraction terminology and product terminology, how those products that we see out in the market come to be. And then we're also joined today by Daniel Malman, who's our Chief Risk Officer, who has a lot of great information on regulations around organic certification and a lot more as it relates to product naming. So we're excited to be joining and give this great information to you guys today. Before we dive into today's main topic, just a little bit about Integrated CBD. We're a vertically integrated institutional quality and scale supplier of organically grown hemp and hemp-derived CBD. We cultivate our industrial hemp on one of the country's largest certified organic farms. That farm is located in Arizona, so we've got that great year-round weather that really supports a very consistent supply of hemp. We really believe in the benefits of sustainable farming as well and have adopted those sustainable farming practices throughout our entire operation. We're also currently building one of the largest GMP certified extraction and isolation facilities in the world. It's also located in Phoenix, and our first phase is set to open in January, so we're only a couple of weeks away from that. If any of you want to escape the cold and come out for a visit to our farm and extraction facility at any time, we'd love to have you. Please reach out if that's of interest. Something else we really truly believe in is full transparency. We like to mention this. So this is our exclusive partnership with Verified Organic, which is a blockchain platform that records all of the growing, harvesting, extraction practices. So you really get a full picture of a product's journey from seed to when our products arrive to you or your customers. So we're really proud of this traceability, think it's critical for this industry and building consumer trust. So that's just a little bit about us, and onto our agenda for today. We are going to cover a lot of great info as it relates to CBD and extraction terminology. We're also going to be looking at processing hemp and all the stages that hemp goes through to manufacture that finished good or ingredient, and the whole process as it relates and how it relates to the terminology that you're used to seeing in the market. We're also going to go over the organic certification process, the things to be aware of, how to find and verify that organic certification, and then briefly touch on some markets considerations and some takeaways from today's webinar that you can take back as you're out and going about your day-to-day, and just things to remember and consider in the market. And again, we'll leave time for questions at the end, so please send those in as those are coming, and we will stay on the line and answer a lot of those as we wrap up today. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Brandon Blass, our lead R&D scientist, and he's going to kick things off with defining some of the basics and starting with the differences between cannabis and hemp. So thank you, Brandon.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on board. Welcome all. I'd first like to turn your attention to the main differences between cannabis and hemp. And what you can say is this is a difference that's been set according to the Farm Bill of 2018 And this entails the idea that in medical cannabis, we consider any cannabis crop grown medicinally having a content of THC by weight, weight percent, having a greater percent of 0.3% or higher. Farm Bill also states, though, however, that any cannabis grown holding a content of THC below or equal to 0.3% by weight is considered hemp. Now, you'll see various cannabinoids and hemp terpene profiles below listed. They all look very similar between the two. And again, this is a legal definition separating the two types of cannabis. Next, I'd also like to bring your attention to specifically the cannabinoid differences between CBD and THC. You'll find that there are some commonalities I'd like to bring up, and both cannabinoids in the sense are categorized as phytocannabinoids as opposed to endocannabinoids, meaning endogenous to the body. And an example of that would be anandamide. Two primary receptors composing the endocannabinoid system found in all humans are coined CB1 and CB2 receptors. We find that CB1 receptors are respective of what you would call the central nervous system, or the CNS, as well as CB2 receptors comprising the endocannabinoid system found in the peripheral nervous system. Now, while all cannabinoids originally are biosynthesized from the plant as an acid variant, it is only upon decarboxylation of THCA, the acid variant of THC, to its primary component THC that allows for binding to occur between CB1 receptors, inducing what we know as a psychoactive euphoric effect. It's interesting to note, however, that has been recently reported in literature that the acid variants of cannabinoids hold orders of magnitude greater binding affinity to non-endocannabinoid related receptors, such as TRP channels, and these are integral to the inflammation process. Continuing on, we can say that THC only binds to CB1 receptors upon decarboxylation. Additionally, CBD itself does not bind to CB1 receptor, and it's key to note that CB1 receptors are the primary receptor responsible for the psychoactive side effects brought about by the activation of THC. Finally, I'd like to bring your attention to a term commonly used both in the medicinal cannabis space as well as the hemp space, the entourage effect. Now, the entourage effect is a term you may be familiar with, and it is a phenomenon resulting from a combination of any various cannabinoids interacting with respective receptors in the presence of its accompanying terpene profile. The term entourage effect has commonly been confused for an effect brought about by the presence of THC with hemp products or cannabinoid products. And this is a misnomer in that while the euphoric psychedelic effect brought about by the presence of concentrated THC can have a unique alteration due to the presence of terpenes, this does not mean the entourage effect is solely unique to cases involving THC. On the contrary, terpenes themselves play an important integral role in enhancing / altering binding affinities of any said cannabinoid to provide a unique therapeutic effect, whether that be psychedelic or analgesic, specific to the strain's unique metabolomic profile. And this illustrates the importance of terpenes found in plant extracts and what has originally given birth to two common terms that we additionally use in the cannabis and hemp space, coined full spectrum and broad spectrum, to which we'll discuss in the next few slides. Further terminology we need to cover before we go through the whole process are terms exclusive to the extraction process, specifically decarboxylation, winterization, and distillation. We'll begin with decarboxylation. Again, this is the process upon applying heat to your hemp byproduct or extract or oil such that the molecular bonds of the acid variants are broken, releasing CO2 molecules from the extract. And the purpose of this is to enhance short path distillation efficiency and yield. Next, we have winterization, and this is a process in which we apply a freshly extracted oil to deep freeze temperatures well below 0 degrees Celsius, thereby separating fats and lipids from the alcohol extract. This is commonly practiced and allows for a finer, cleaner extract to be processed later down the pipeline. Lastly, I want to cover the term distillation. Cannabinoids that are and residual terpenes that are pulled from the raw extract are subjected to a process called distillation, and this is the process wherein we go ahead and heat at specific temperatures and pressures the mixture of full oil into its individual components, allowing us to separate out terpene oils as well as cannabinoid oils. Finally, I'd like to go ahead, after covering those terms, I'd like to go through the process to which we begin from the farm all the way to finished goods. First, here we have up our screen is the section upon where we talk about our farm. After our crop has been freshly harvested, we collect our fresh biomass, which is then subjected to our drying facility. Our drying facility allows us to cure hemp to a certain moisture level, allowing for an optimal ability to grind it and provide two types of products. One product can be turned into smokable flour and sold as is, while the grinded material can also additionally be further processed into what's called pelletized biomass. This pelletized biomass is then sent off to our facilities where we perform the extraction. Our extraction facilities begin by first subjecting these pelletized biomass particulates to an organic alcohol extraction process. Our organic alcohol extraction process results in two different products: a spent biomass, which can be resold, repurposed, and recycled as deemed fit, or a saturated alcohol extract containing the full profile of cannabinoids and terpenes, as well as various other constituents. Commonly, this saturated alcohol extract is again processed through a process called winterization for the sake of separating out those fatty lipid byproducts. Once this oil has been extracted and winterized, we then subject the winterized saturated alcohol extract to what's called a solvent recovery process. What's commonly used is termed a falling film evaporator, and this allows us to recover 95% of the organic alcohol we use to extract from the actual mixture. This results in a full spectrum raw oil. This raw oil is then subjected to the process of decarboxylation. Decarboxylation of this oil, this raw oil, allows us to subject the oil further downstream into a micellar tank where the residual 5% remaining alcohol is removed. Finally, we now have a raw oil ready for short pat distillation. And short pat distillation, as mentioned previously, is a process in which we apply controlled temperatures and pressures to allow for select fractions of the mixture to be collected. And the result is a select terpene strain-specific oil that comes off first at lower boiling points, and then at higher boiling points, a strain-specific cannabinoid distillate ranging 75 to 85% in cannabinoid profile. Either oil or either product, if you will, can be sold separately or combined to form a strain-specific full-spectrum distillate. Further product terminology that results at the end of the stream would result in the terms full spectrum as well as broad spectrum. I'd like to cover a little bit of detail on full spectrum first, as this can be considered an extract of hemp that includes full profiles of cannabinoids as well as terpenes, excluding the lipids, triglycerides, and fats that are removed through winterization. Examples of this could be full spectrum hemp extract oil, which would be a raw oil that has been double winterized and decarboxylated. Another example would be full spectrum distillate, which is a refined oil containing the full cannabinoid profile and terpene profile after the distillation and refinement process. Lastly, I'd like to turn your attention to broad spectrum. Now, broad spectrum has been loosely used in the market, and it's key to note that extracts containing more limited spectrum or profiles of cannabinoids and terpenes can be applied to this term. And it's very important to note that this is the most ambiguous term in the market, and I would err a side of caution as you approach various different products claiming such a label as broad spectrum, as every different company may go ahead and title and define broad spectrum in their own unique way. For the product terminology, you may have heard zero THC, no THC, and THC-free. These are terms typically used when THC has been removed or an oil or product at the end of extraction has been remediated. And to go ahead and talk about this in more detail, we refer to zero THC or no THC, THC-free products as those that are non-detectable in terms of the limit of detection and limit of quantification that an analytical instrument is capable of producing in terms of verifying the metabolomic profile of that product. Usually a certificate of analysis is provided, especially when a claim such as zero T is provided. Trace amounts of THC still, however, can be found in all hemp and cannabis products. So it's important to define this term for the customer and consumer. Zero THC also does not always equate to what's called quote unquote broad spectrum. Further examples that illustrate this would be zero THC distillate, refined oil containing full cannabinoid and terpene profiles after distillation and further THC remediation. Zero THC hemp extract oil would be another example where zero THC distillate blended with MTC oil is the result in cannabinoids and terpene rich profiles combined in a tincture formulation. Another term that you may find on the market in terms of product terminology is biomass. Again, this refers to harvested hemp plant, whether that be in full plant form or granulated into a particulate or even a pelletized form. Isolate, water dispersible, and water soluble are also three terms that you will find on the market. Isolate is a term that refers to confined molecules in this most pure form, and this is very respective of cannabinoids. This comes in a powdered format and can be seen as a white powdery substance and typically in its purest 99.98% pure form. Water dispersible, on the other hand, is a term that's used to describe suspension particles involving the final product of hemp extracts or oil, in which the particle sizes result in a heterogeneous or cloudy or precipitated mixture, meaning that the clarity and the transparency and the color, even the viscosity, may have been altered upon addition of this water soluble or water dispersible ingredient. And water dispersible products can be found in full spectrum, broad spectrum, zero T, as it relates to the products of the cannabinoid profile. Lastly, I want to talk about water soluble CBD or water soluble different types of products. And this refers to particle sizes that result in a homogeneous solution, particles ranging around 25 nanometers, to which anything at that limit or less is ideal. And the resulting formulation of that is such that a formula holds the same integrity of water or the beverage it was applied to, in which no color, no clarity, or transparency has been altered, let alone viscosity. These water-soluble CBD technologies can come in various forms as well, powder and liquid format. And these are also available with different cannabinoid profiles. I'd like to turn your attention over to organic certification, where our Chief Revenue Officer, Daniel Malman, will take over.
Great. Thank you, Brandon, and thanks everybody for joining. And I'll give you a second to let your brains settle down a little for my part of the presentation. And just a side note, if anybody does want to speak to Brandon, he's one of our best resources, and we're happy to put him in touch with you for any terminology that you may need a little bit more in depth with. So I'd asked the team to put a organic certificate in here. This is actually a link to our page on the NOP database. The reason I did that is one of the biggest issues that we have is not just defining terminology, but it's also defining what's real and what's not in this industry. And I like to point out the resources that are A, free, B, readily available to anybody, and then C, that are very verified by our government bodies. So this is one of those that I highly recommend. It's the NOP database. We're registered. Registering for organic certifications began midway through this year. Before that, there was definitely a lot of confusion around the ability to register as a USDA organic certified body. But as you see here, Integrated CBD has been given its certification for its farming side, and will be going through the same process for its processing side. So all you would do is look down at the certified products towards the bottom. I focus your attention. And for folks that are on the processing side as well and have been given their certified organic status, those should show up there. So if people are saying we are certified organic in this, all you have to do is go on this website. It'll tell you that, and then you can always verify by calling their certifier that's shown to you as well. So the USDA Organic Certified process is a joint effort between the AMS and the USDA, which the AMS is a subsidiary. We provided the certificate here on the website. All you really need to do is go through an audit and use the right practices. There's not a ton of folks this year that were doing it in the hemp space. One big reason is cost. Two is at the beginning of the year, it was not anticipated whether or not the USDA was going to allow for certification. So expending all that assets and capital to get a certification or not get a certification was a risk we chose to take. And then also you need to have the right farmland. So farm has to not have been farmed on within the last 3 years using any pesticides or any solvents that were not approved. And or have been fallow. So a lot of our ground was fallow, made it a lot easier for us. You have to adopt organic practices. You have to use a certified agent and submit applications. And then of course, there's gonna be fees involved. Once you go through all of that, just like any organic process for any other food or vegetable that exists, you would get certified. And as you will see, there's probably hundreds of people that have now been certified in the hemp. When I was first searching this website in April, there was about 2. So it's definitely something that people are starting to take note of and something that is demanded highly by our customers. So other considerations to take when you're vetting folks around CBD or any cannabinoid is looking at their COA. So much like the point I made around checking NOP databases, these are things that can be verified. So one of the biggest issues we have is a COA is a PDF that's sent to you from email to email. Not a great way of verifying it, hence why we've chosen to use a blockchain. We've chosen to use a blockchain mechanism, so it's very available to people and includes all the metadata around our processes and procedures. We've found that to be a much more successful way of tying out. We've been sent several fake COAs that were doctored, so I highly recommend, and I wanted to make a note of that. The easiest thing you can do is get a COA, is call the lab, ask for verification, get permission from the person who sent it to you. If any of that stuff comes off as a no, then you're probably getting the answers you already need from that conversation. Some of the things that Brandon had to find, give more of the terminology of the process, but things to look out for is when you are looking for a good distillate or concentration of refined oils, they should contain between 70 and 90% cannabinoid. The reason that you don't want much more than that is the next point, which is all of a sudden you go from a liquid viscous product to you go to a crystallized product where you actually start seeing something like most of you would have seen if you put honey in your closet and then go to take it out and it becomes hard and sort of a crunchy product that almost looks like a lollipop. That's what happens when you have an over concentration and no liquids left. You'll start getting more crystallized product that's not able to be freely moved around in any of your refined and finalized products. Broad spectrum 0T THC-free, that doesn't guarantee a complete elimination of THC-free. So it's also something to note. There was a class action lawsuit filed recently. Just be very careful. You should consult with your legal counsel around that. But having THC-free on something and then not defining what THC-free means to you or your shop is a risk you're taking. So we've chosen to define it, and you'll see it on our labels. And by definition, industrial hemp, Brandon reviewed earlier. And Spectrum is a labeled product that may blend of isolate and carrier oil as to cheaper to produce. What that really means is some of the times you do it for compliance reasons. So you have to put an MCT oil or an ethanol oil. We tend to err on that side of caution, which is we ship and deal with only compliant products at this point. Some folks, we will hear the term in process for folks that are doing manufacturer to manufacturer. We have not gotten comfortable around that, but it's something that you definitely should be aware of out there. And while we wrap up, we just put a list of our products out there and how we define them. It's an ever evolving. It was actually different several months ago. Everybody's learning And as the FDA continues to make comments, we're staying very much ears to the ground on that. And then, I'll thank both my colleagues for helping present on this. Thank you for joining, and then open it up for questions. We have the chat capability, so feel free to start piping some questions, and we'll try to answer them for you. Thank you again for your time.
And to reiterate what Dan said there at the end, please, I know we covered a lot of information. Some of it was pretty technical, especially as it relates to how these products are made, how they're extracted, at what point in the extraction process, is full spectrum and broad spectrum, and all those fun questions that we hope you got a little bit of a grasp on. But again, we're here for the next few minutes and would love to answer any other questions that you have specifically related to the topics we covered today. We do have had a question come in on what is the site we can visit in Phoenix. That's going to be our 154 square foot extraction facility. It's located right near the airport, so right in the middle of the heart of Phoenix. It is going to be coming online like I said, in January of 2020, but we are doing tours. We do them daily. And people are more than welcome to come visit that facility, as well as our corporate offices, which are just up the street in Scottsdale. And then we do also allow farm tours and farm visits. The farm is about a 2-hour trip down to the farm from that extraction facility. So had another question about water-soluble CBD, and I will turn that over to Brandon to answer.
I'd love to give you a little bit more detail into water-soluble CBD. If there's any specifics concerning this type of product, please feel free to elaborate, and I'll be happy to address that question. If there's anything specific you want to know, we have another question on here. If a hemp crop is below 0.3% THC level, what is the extract and then is extracted into a concentrate, does the THC levels increase? This is a very common question, and this is a very big topic that needs to be addressed. Actually, I'm glad you asked. What we find is that during the extraction process, as a result of increasing concentration of a desired cannabinoid such as CBD, the nature of the process also elevates all other cannabinoid levels, to which then, hence we need to either process through THC remediation or dilution processes. We have another question on board here that says, how do we get a tour of the facility of the farm? I'll let Daniel Malman handle this one.
Yeah, you can reach out to us via email. The emails are provided on our website and also on this presentation. You can email Julie Oyster, who's our head of marketing, and she can facilitate a tour of any of our facilities. Anyone else? There was a lot of good terminology in there. We're happy to field questions. We know there's a lot of ambiguity in the market. We're not saying that everything that the way we view things is necessarily 100% aligned with everyone in the market. But we're fortunate enough to have an R&D scientist here that does think out loud with us when we're deciding the names of our products and how to market them. And then there's also the, making sure that we're compliant with the way that the FDA would like us to market these products accordingly. Compliance reasons for shipping products interstate. So although hemp has been defined clearly with rules and regulations, CBD remains a little bit of a murky water. So we are just taking our paths that we think is most prudent and keeps us all out of jail.
Another couple of questions here that may relate to the more scientific side of things. One question is CBD water soluble, and what percentage? And is there certain CBD more soluble in water than others? To start off with, what I'll explain is CBD is a very lipophilic molecule, meaning very fat and oil loving in terms of solubility. So it's very difficult, if you will, to have CBD alone go into solution when applied to an aqueous solution such as water. So when we speak of water-soluble CBD, we speak of a formulation or a post-processing formulation or technique that's applied to the actual molecule, whether that be in the form of a full spectrum, broad spectrum, or isolate variation. And as such, these novel techniques that allow us to attain small nanometer-sized particulates encapsulated by what you would refer to as an aliphatic molecule is what allows us to achieve this water-soluble CBD effect. And this can be done through various different types of carriers or emulsions.
So somebody else asked, how many hemp crops can we get in a year? Or how many are legal? So there is no legal restriction on the amount of hemp crops you can produce, only that their crop is defined as having 0.3% THC or less, and it's now going to be a total THC. So again, keep that in mind. There's a lot of people advertise that their THC contents are really low and they have very high CBD. A lot of them were leveraging the 2014 Farm Bill, which allowed you to only look at the Delta 9, not the THCA content. And as Brandon mentioned earlier in the slide, the acid variance plus its Delta 9 is what the new rules are. So just be very cautious about that. If you see a really high CBD number, make sure you focus on total THC because that's the pro forma regulations and something we see. But in terms of the crops you can grow in Arizona, we're fortunate we could grow probably 4 crops. One, using a photosensitive, which is about a 4 to 6 month crop, and then another which is less photosensitive, meaning during the months where we have less than 12 hours of daylight, we can still harvest and grow crops 2 to 3 cycles a year. So we in Arizona have a fortunate capability with the weather and the sunshine where we can grow up to 4 crop cycles a year.
Another question we have on board is regarding comparison of alcoholic beverages relating to metrics and understanding gauge and potency, and how we approach this perspective from a standpoint where we're looking at hemp crops and hemp products. Specifically, when we want to look at potency, we want to look specifically at CBD and THC content, as Daniel Mailman mentioned. We know that we have a 0.3% limit with regards to THC found within dry hemp biomass. However, it is important to note that that 0.3% should be applied to all finished products across the board, whether that be a broad spectrum, full spectrum, or isolate based formulation. Now, as far as CBD goes, and as far as THC goes with regards to any levels to be concerned about in potency, as of right now, THC is the #1 ingredient that needs to be evaluated in terms of caution when thinking about high potency levels. CBD, on the other hand, can be a factor in your decision making when purchasing a product. However, that doesn't necessarily mean a product needs to contain a maximum or overtly large potency of CBD to have a well-established effect or therapeutic effect.
One of the questions we get a lot is around consistency between products. And it's very hard because, again, in a natural state, the consistency between products is very hard to achieve if you're trying to be natural. So isolates, by definition, is an isolated molecule. But when you talk about spectrums, you're talking about a whole range of cannabinoids that can vary literally from one plant to the next. So we're using the same process for each, but the resultant product from a very new crop, this crop is only years old. It's not 80, 90 years old like corn, et cetera. So you are going to get variance in the results from natural processes for pulling these out. So I just want to make that clear. And the other thing that comes up a lot is the difference between the decarboxylated version of the molecule and the non-decarboxylated. So i.e. looking and making sure that when you're getting CBD results and potency results, that you're looking at the CBD versus CBDA. Those are very different molecules and they could interact differently within your body. We're not saying one or the other is a better route, but it's just something to, again, keep in mind as you look through COAs. That's a very important differentiator.
Another question I want to quickly answer relating to water-soluble CBD products is your water-soluble product odorless and colorless? This can come in a couple variations. If a water-soluble CBD product, from a general standpoint, is formulated with an isolate, the odor and the flavor and the color itself should not be altered by any noticeable level or degree. However, if a water-soluble CBD product has been made with a full spectrum or broad spectrum powderized ingredient, chances are this incorporates terpenes and flavonoids that are respective of the plant's metabolomic profile and thus produce a specific odor or maybe even a specific type of color. Generally speaking though, a true water-soluble CBD product shouldn't affect the color if it is truly soluble.
We do have a couple questions related to the hemp and hemp varieties. So the answer is there are different varieties. You know, from the knowledge we have thus far this year, we had about 13 different types of varieties on our 2,500 acres that we planted this year. They're all very similar. They probably all come from similar parent plants, you know, only a couple of years back. But what's happened is people have licensed them and they've tried to, you know, spin them out. So each generation gets a little bit different. But the answer is they're different, but they're very similar at this point. You are starting to see now CBG, CBN varieties where people are trying to express and create varieties that express different cannabinoids. But within CBD, by definition, most of them will have the same molecule of CBD, but the terpenes, the blends, the amounts, the percentages of the mix of that spectrum is really what changes the varieties. And then I will say the ability to grow them because there's such new generations of varieties is also a difficult task for any farmer at this point. We have time, I think, for one more question or two more questions. So we'll go to the one around THC removal, Brandon.
Sure, yeah, so removal of THC and THC remediation. We have a question here that says, what do you view to be the leading THC removal technology process utilized today? As it stands today, the most conventional and widely practiced method for THC removal, especially at the industrial scale, would incorporate what's called flash chromatography. Keep in mind when products have been processed through a THC removal process incorporating flash chromatography, there's a high chance that this product is then therefore knocked out of the organic certified process. One of the processes we plan to incorporate is the use of centrifugal partition chromatography, which is also a chromatography practice, however, one in which that practices green chemistry and minimizes solvent use and chemical waste at a far greater efficiency. And then let's see, I think we have one or two other, one question maybe left here that we can cover.
Talk a little bit about the equipment without giving you a tour and giving away too much information. It's a pretty sophisticated set of equipment. It's not one for, there's a lot of pipes and pieces of equipment that are used for the extraction, which is the first part. Then it leaves that extraction area, goes to the second through another set of pipes. So it's definitely not one piece. I would guess there's probably, walking through the facility in my mind, 20 to 25 pieces in just the first pass of our extraction and until it gets to primary distillation. And it's about, I don't know, maybe 20,000 square feet, 15,000 square feet of space occupied for those. So it's not as simple as, I've heard adages around people who've put hemp in a bucket with some alcohol, put it in a room and come back a few days later. That is really how simple the process can be if you want to do it in your garage. But the way that we do it is a much more sophisticated, as Brandon and Julie mentioned, we're trying to get ISO certification, CGMP, and a lot of others. And the requirements that those have cost a lot, but also require a lot of process piping, not just a bunch of individual pieces of machine and humans taking it from one to the other. And that's how we also feel comfortable around the in-process of THC content.
GMP, if you're unfamiliar with that term, stands for good manufacturing practices.
So that brings up a good point. So thank you for asking that question. What you'll see a lot is people that say they operate
with good manufacturing process or practices, that's very different. It's like saying I grow stuff organically or I'm USDA certified. It sounds the same to most people, but if you're certified, you're certified. If you're growing organically, it doesn't mean you're necessarily certified. So there's a lot of ways that people will blind you a little bit to the facts. Just be sure to ask good questions, understand the checks you need to put in place. Because we went to a conference at Supply Side West, and about half the folks said they operate under the good manufacturing practices, but they were not GMP certified. So, you know, one requires an auditor and all this. The other one is, well, I read the manual and I tried to follow the best I could to those practices. So it's definitely distinguishable.
I think the last question I'll touch base on, because I feel this is very important to note. We have a question regarding the difference between synthetic and natural CBD and THC. As of right now, if you're coming across any product that incorporates synthetic THC, I strongly urge you to avoid it. You have no idea what that molecule really truly is, as well as how it's truly made. Any products that come from any products that are claiming CBD or THC should naturally be procured in a very, very clean, transparent fashion, that you know where it's coming from seed to final product, and it should be a natural product at the end. And I think that's it. I think that's about all the time we have. We're gonna turn this over to Julie.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you guys again for joining us today. Just as a reminder, our team is available. We will be putting this webinar and recording as well as these slides and sending these to you as a thank you for registering and joining us today. So look for that in your inbox coming in the next few days. In that email, I will make sure that we put in the way to contact us, both for the farm and facility visits, as well as a way to get a hold of our Brandon and our R&D team for any further questions, and always feel free to reach out to the team in regards to the industry and anything that we can help answer. We want to be a resource for you all out there, and just have the discussion of what we're seeing and continue the work of this great industry. So thank you again for joining us, and we will talk to you soon. Happy holidays, and have a great rest of your week.